Welcome to the Vision Driven Basketball Training Podcast. Appreciate you guys for tuning in this week. Whether you're an Apple Podcast or Spotify listening, or Pandora, SoundCloud, Google Podcasts, wherever else you may be listening from, I appreciate you guys. And everybody who's watching on YouTube right now, shout out to all of you. If you're on YouTube, make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Drop a comment as well. Let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions, you have anything you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments as well. And then everybody who's on Apple Podcasts right now listening, do me a favor, scroll down to the bottom of the page and leave a review. Let me know what you think about the show. You guys who listened before know that before every episode, if I have a new review, I read it on the show. So I've got one new one for you guys today from Bucket 5000. It says, a basketball podcast that answers literally, I think it probably would say everything or every question, or I don't know, but Apple cut it off. So that's all I can see is up to literally. It says, hey, Coach Ethan, I've literally learned so much from this podcast, and the crazy thing is I'm only around halfway through the total episodes. You even add more each week. Keep up the good work. I'm learning more and more, and the podcast format definitely helps. I even like how you ask your feedback and what we want to see you answer. Just a request for what to do on off days when you're not doing physical activity, things you should do to prepare for JV and varsity, and possibly how to survive during the school year when having to get up at 5:30 a.m. Thank you so much. Appreciate the review. I'll kind of briefly run through this stuff, and then potentially this is stuff that I might make, go more in depth on in future episodes as well. So I appreciate the suggestions. I appreciate the review for sure. When it comes to off days, when you're not doing any sort of like basketball or weight room related activities, there's a lot of ways you can go with it. So, we can talk about like active recovery where, maybe you go out for maybe just a walk, right? Just to get yourself moving. I think it's always good to get some sort of movement every day. It might not be your full basketball workout or a full strenuous weight room workout, but just going out for a 5-minute walk, taking your dog for a walk or, just whatever, just getting outside and moving, I think is always a good thing. I think that's something you should do every single day. And then, on top of that, stretching is another great thing you can do. So it can be as simple as just like your normal stretches that you might do, in gym class. I'm sure there's that's something that I could look into more potentially and just see like, okay, what are the best stretches you could do? But that's certainly something as well. Foam rolling is a great thing. I love foam rolling. I'm sure a lot of you guys have done that as well. I think that's a great thing to do on and off day with sort of active recovery. Those like massage guns as well. Like I know a few people who have those. That's something that you can get going a little bit on your off days too. I think that's a great thing. There's all these different tools that you can use and these different method strategies. I would say in general, you want to move a little bit, right? You want to make sure that you aren't just being stagnant the whole day. That's going to be just in terms of being a healthy human being. That's important. But then also, nutrition, making sure you're drinking a lot of water, getting your protein, your carbs, like getting enough food to recover as well. That's super, super important. So those are really the things. Then, and honestly, sometimes it'd be good to just mentally kind of relax a little bit. If there's something that you don't get to do during the week because you're too busy training or you're too busy doing whatever else, like on that off day, you may have time for whatever that activity may be for you. So I would say that kind of depends on person to person, but in general, that's what I'd say. When it comes to preparing for JV and varsity, best thing you do is make sure that in the off season you attend as much as you can, right? When it comes to open gyms or workouts, whatever it may be, just having a relationship with your coaches, they know who you are, and they get a feel for who you are. Like, they have experience with you. That's always a good thing. And then just, I'd say going with that, kind of figuring out what your role could be on that team, how you could contribute to winning, and then getting really good at those sort of things. And this is a topic I'm going to go into more detail on for sure, because I think that as we get closer to when tryouts are going to be for a lot of you guys, I think it's an important topic as well. And then surviving the school year during, we have to get up early. The kind of the simple thing is just make sure you get to bed early enough, and figure out your time, like manage your time effectively throughout the day. So if you know that like, okay, if I want to get home and have time to, get a workout in or go to the weight room or do whatever, like I got to make sure that I have this done before. So maybe you have, a study hall during school where you can get homework done, or maybe you have an opportunity on the bus home where you can get homework done, or maybe during lunch you can get some homework done, like whatever. Like try and find opportunities to get stuff done early so that you have time in the later half of your day to get the other stuff done. That's the biggest thing I can say is just time management, a crucial thing for you to look at. So again, appreciate the review. A couple things in here I'll go more in depth on. And like I said, guys, I every week if I get new reviews, I'll read them on the show. So if you have anything for me, Apple Podcasts, leave a review. Let me know what you think. I appreciate you guys already for that. So that all being said, let's hop into today's topic, which is going to be 3 things that are going to hold you back as a basketball player. And these are just things that I was kind of thinking about this week, talking to a couple of my friends who are also coaches, just about kind of stuff that we see, the trends that we see in terms of players who almost self-sabotage, right? The stuff here is nothing about this is like external from you. Like nothing about this is, oh, well, if you're not this tall or you're not this quick, then it's probably going to hold you back, right? That's not what I'm talking about with this. I'm talking about 3 things that are all completely under your control, right? That if you don't take care of those things, you'll be held back and you won't reach your highest potential as a basketball player. So I want to hop into it. And these are in no particular order, though I think that for each of you, you may, maybe one of these sticks out more to you than another one does. But yeah, we'll hop into it. So the first one is not competing. And this is kind of a little more in-depth than it sounds like, but all that I mean by competing is that no matter who you are, where you are, how big you are, how small you are, how old you are, how big your opponent is, how small your opponent is, how old they are, whatever the weight of their name or their their resume, whatever that may be, that doesn't matter to you. You go out and you compete hard against whoever that may be. That's what I mean by competing, right? That's what I mean by being a competitor, is that you approach a situation where you compete against, no matter who it is, like you go into that trying your best to win. Okay? That doesn't mean you always will win, right? And as we're going to get into later on, like sometimes, it just so happens that you might lose a lot, right? And that's completely okay. But what I want to really stress is that the ability to compete has to be something that you have with you every single time you step on the floor, right? Because if you don't have that, then you're immediately lacking in one of the most crucial, important areas when it comes to being a successful basketball player, successful in anything, especially any sport, but basketball for sure. If you don't have the ability to compete, or if you pick and choose when you compete, that's where you're going to run into troubles and you're not going to be as great as you can be as a player. So, sometimes, for me as a coach, if I have a player and I know that they pick and choose when they compete, I know that if we go play a team that they look at and they say, oh, I'm bigger than all these guys, I'm faster than that guy, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to play really hard today. I know that they might look at it like that, but then we might have the next game where the other team, it's the opposite. They're way bigger than us, way faster than us, and all of a sudden they're not quite competing as hard, right? Because sometimes it's because they're scared. Sometimes it's just because they lack confidence and they're insecure about what they are as an athlete, and sometimes that's it. But as a coach, you can't trust a player like that. If there's a player who picks and chooses when they compete and when they don't, you can't trust them because you just don't know what version of them you're going to get. So therefore, you kind of have to overlook them and look down the bench to other guys who you at least know, for better or worse, they're going to compete, right? Because then you get some sort of consistency out of that. But the reason that this is so important, guys, is because it's not only that sort of stuff, but it's also, you have to look at it like there are only 2 things that you actually control when it comes to the game of basketball, right? You don't control whether or not the ball goes in. You don't control whether or not your teammate, loses the ball, goes out of bounds. You don't control whether or not someone throws a bad pass to you. You don't control whether or not the guy you're guarding hits a tough step back where you got a finger on the ball. That stuff happens, right? You might shoot the ball perfectly and somebody comes out of nowhere and blocks it, right? You might shoot the ball perfectly, but the air conditioning's on and it blows the ball an 1/8 of an inch to the left and you miss it, right? Sometimes that's just how it is. You don't control any of that stuff. What you do control is your effort and your attitude. So when you aren't competing to the fullest, you essentially are giving up control of the 2 things that you actually have control over. So now you're completely giving everything to chance. Everything is just luck. Maybe you have a good day and you still, perform well. Maybe you have a bad day and now it's horrible, right? But you really have no control over it. It's just really kind of luck of the draw, okay? Because now when you aren't competing at your hardest, you aren't giving your best effort, and your attitude is not where it needs to be. So the two things that you can control that will positively impact your performance, you now no longer have control over that. All because your lack of competing at the moment, okay? So now you have to understand that competing, like the question becomes, okay, well, what does competing look like, right? Because I think when we think about that, sometimes players think like, oh, you have to be, the dude who's always talking trash and always getting in people's face and always trying to act tough. And if that's you, then that's fine. But I know a lot of players, I've coached players who will act like that. They'll act super tough, and they'll put on this facade of, oh yeah, I'm all about it. I'm tough. I'm this. I compete. But as soon as it's time to compete against somebody or a team or players who are better than them, bigger than them, more athletic than them, more have a more accomplished resume than they do, they either flat out don't show up, right? They either just flat out don't even show up to the opportunity, or they get there and they don't really give it as much as they could, right? That's a lot of times how that happens, okay? A lot of times the dude who tries to act like they're all that isn't actually all that. Typically, a lot of times they actually end up being mentally the weakest person in the gym, right? So don't confuse trying to be tough with actually being a competitor. They're not the same thing. Sometimes for some players, that's how they are, and that's cool. But for a lot of players, that's kind of the fake look that they put on. What I mean by competing, again, is how I started. Like, it just means that no matter who's in front of you, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, you go out and you try your best to win. And you are okay with the fact that if you play against somebody who's good, you might lose. And when you play against players who are good all the time, you might lose a lot. And you're okay with that. You still go out and you compete and you try your best to win every single time regardless. And you aren't scared of that. You aren't scared of, oh, I don't want to lose and look bad. You understand that you get better every time that you play against somebody better than you. I just posted on Instagram yesterday. I guess at this point it'd be 2 days ago. Well, yeah, about 2 days ago from when this drops. And essentially I was talking about the biggest mistake that you can make as a basketball player. And this goes for not just basketball, but this literally goes for anything. The biggest mistake that you can make in life as a basketball player, whatever it may be, is to not give your all to something because of the fear that your all might still not be good enough to achieve that. And this is something that I see all the time from working with different players, from talking to different coaches. Like, this is a major, major, major problem. And an example of this could be, not giving your all. It could be avoiding putting in extra work, or just flat out not doing as much as you possibly could to achieve a goal that you've set. Because, let's say that could be you making the team. It could be you getting recruited, you getting a scholarship, you starting on your team, you earning an all-conference spot, you averaging this amount of points per game. Like, whatever that goal may be, when somebody doesn't give their all to it because they're afraid that if they give everything that they have, it still might not work out. You still might not get that spot. You still might not make the team. You still might not get that scholarship offer. You still might not average the amount of points you want to average. You might still not start, right? All those things are possible. And if you give your all to it and it doesn't work out, then your ego is crushed because now you have nothing, right? Now you've proven that you are not good enough. Whereas what a lot of players will do is they won't give everything, because if they fail, then they can always say, oh, if I would have done this better, then I could have done it. Or if I would have tried a little harder, I could have done it. Or if I would have did this, I would have did that. And it subconsciously makes you feel better about yourself, because you can always go back to, oh, well, if I would have done this better, then I could have done it. You don't have to say like, oh, I just wasn't good enough, right? Because if you give everything and you don't do it, that is what the case is. You sometimes just aren't good enough to get something done. But that's two ends of the spectrum right there, right? You have a player who doesn't compete, doesn't give everything because of the fact that they might still fail, and then that's just a crushing blow to their ego. And then you have the other player who is okay with that, and recognizes that they might still fail, but that's kind of a part of it, right? So the thing is, like, a lot of people, like a lot of players they're capable of so much more than they actually know, right? They could be so much better than they actually are, but a lot of times it's just mental limitations that hold them back, right? Mentally, it's confidence, whatever it may be. It's completely a self-imposed mental block that's what's holding them back from being as good as they can possibly be. And the two things to keep in mind for this is that, number one, you have to recognize and believe and understand that failure is not actually a thing, right? And this is a cliche thing that gets said a lot, but it actually is true, right? You either are going to achieve your goal that you set out for yourself, which is great, or you're going to learn very, very valuable lessons and gain very valuable experience by going after that thing. So whether or not you achieve that goal, you're going to win at that situation, because even if you don't get it, right? Even if you set your goal is to start, right? Your goal is to start next year, and you work as hard as you possibly can. You put in extra. You do everything you possibly could to earn that starting spot. And there's just somebody who's flat out better than you, and it is what it is, right? You just weren't good enough to earn that spot. Well, some people might look at that as a failure, but you might look at it and say, well, okay, I know that, I'm not starting right now, but why is that? Well, maybe it's because I neglected to actually focus on this. Or maybe it's because I need to get better at understanding this team concept. Maybe I don't understand floor spacing very well. So in practice now, I can focus on that. Well, maybe it's because, I don't handle pressure very well. Well, maybe now I can focus on getting better at that. And so now you actually get a chance to truly see where you're at, as opposed to somebody who might have not given everything that they could. They can just go back to, oh, well, if I would have just, maybe done more in the offseason, I probably could start. And that's what they're going to fall back on. They're not actually going to take another step forward and say, well, okay, now I need to actually focus on doing this, because if I do this, then maybe I'll have a chance to start now. Or maybe next year, if I do this really well, I'll get a chance to do that, right? So that's where you have to understand that failure is actually a really, really positive thing if you use it the right way. It can actually really help you to take yourself to that next level if you view it that way. Okay, but if you view failure as something that's final, like, oh, if I don't earn that starting spot, then I'm a failure, and I guess I am done playing basketball. Well, if that's how you view it, then that's how it's going to be. But if you view it as, okay, what can I learn from this? What experience did I gain from this? Then that's where it becomes super, super important. And you actually should look and say, hey, you know what? If I go after this goal and I still fail at it, we can go back to competing, right? If I try my best, if I go to the park and there's somebody there who's older than me, bigger, faster, stronger, they're better than me, and I play them one-on-one and they beat me, right? Maybe they beat me 11-0, right? Can I gain something from that? Can I learn something from that? Can I get better because of that experience? If the answer is yes, then that's something you should do, because long-term it's going to be beneficial for you. Whereas if you were scared to do it, you wouldn't actually get to go through that learning experience. So that's why it's super important to compete, super important to understand that even if you try your best at something, you fail at it, that's actually a really good thing if you use it the right way, right? That's something that, in my sessions, that's something that I try and convey all the time. It's just like, listen, guys, we might do a ball handling drill and you might really push yourself. You might lose the ball, and that's okay because it means you're getting better at it. You don't have to be perfect, right? We might do some competitive stuff. Maybe it's a one-on-one or whatever, right? And you might be in the session, you might lose that drill. You might lose every single drill that day, right? We might play to 5 in every drill. You might lose every single drill. But if you learned one thing during that session, if you made one adjustment, right? The first time that you went for the rep, that you got blocked. The next time you hit him with a pump fake and then you scored on it, right? That's a major improvement, a major win for you right there. And if that's all you get out of the session, then you became better, and you losing all those drills was actually positive. It was actually a good thing for you, right? Because it's not about winning right now. It's about winning in the long term when the games get here and it matters. It's about you achieving that goal long term, right? As opposed to you winning in the moment. Okay, so that's the one thing that I always try and convey to my players in our sessions. So the other key to this is that you have to be able to recognize when your ego or that little voice inside your head is trying to tell you to avoid giving your all to something, to avoid putting yourself in a position where you might fail at something, okay? Because it's gonna happen to you. And whether it happens to you a lot or a little bit, there's gonna be there to an extent. Some players, this completely derails them, and they can't do anything that might put them at risk of looking bad. Some players, it's not quite as bad as that, but it's always going to be there. So you have to be able to recognize, okay, wait, that's not me. That's my ego telling me that I shouldn't do that because they don't want to look bad, right? But the net positive of potentially looking bad is that I gain learning. Like, I learned from that, and I get better because of it. So now long term, I actually will look better because of that, right? That's what you have to start to recognize. So be willing to go out and do those things that are a little bit uncomfortable, right? Be willing to go out and compete when you're going against somebody better than you, right? Be willing to go out and chase after something that you aren't guaranteed to get. And I promise you that long term, whether or not you achieve what you want to achieve, you're going to gain experience from that, and you're going to learn lessons from that are going to transcend basketball, whatever it is you do. It's going to help you as a person going forward, okay? That's one of the biggest keys I can give you guys when it comes to advice, is just don't be afraid to put your all into something, because that it's not the end of the world if you fail at something. Because again, in my opinion, in my view, the way I look at it, failure is not a real thing, right? And that, I think, is something that a lot of players should key in on. So on to number 2. The second thing that will hold you back as a basketball player is handling adversity poorly. And when I say adversity, the way that you handle adversity, things not going your way, things being difficult, the way that you handle that is going to determine what level you can get to. Because everybody can be good when things are good. Everybody can be good when you're winning by 25 points. Everybody can be good when nobody's gunning for your starting spot and it's cool, right? It's a lot more difficult to be good when you're losing by 25 points or when you just lost your starting spot to somebody. That's where it's a lot more difficult to go out and to compete. That's where it becomes more difficult to go out and do the right thing every single day and still put in the effort that you need to be putting in, because you don't feel quite as good about yourself, right? Because there's a lot of things that are hard, okay? But really, the biggest thing to understand with adversity, guys, is that it's not about who avoids the most adversity. It's not about who can get through life, get through basketball without experiencing any adversity. It's really about who can hit adversity. Because again, if you are playing against players who are as good or better than you, then there's gonna be difficult moments. Like, there will be. There's no avoiding it. Okay, so understanding that adversity is going to come. Me as a coach, I want 5 guys on the floor who can handle adversity when it hits, right? That's almost, to me, more important than playing my best 5 players. Like, I would hope that would be the same thing. My best 5 players also the best 5 at handling adversity. Usually not the case. But if I have 5 guys on the floor who can handle adversity really well, then I know that we're always going to have a chance. No matter what the situation is, we're going to have a chance, because I don't have guys who are going to quit because we're down by this much, or we're going to quit because this went wrong and the ref made a bad call, their teammate messed something up, they messed something up, I said something too they didn't like, whatever, right? That is where the way you handle adversity actually has a tangible impact on the outcome of basketball games. So that's something that's super important, right? You could, how good you are as a basketball player matters for sure. Your ability to shoot, dribble, pass, play defense, all those things, that matters. But what I would say matters even more is just how mentally tough you are, in terms of how well you handle adversity, your ability to compete when things are difficult. Like, that stuff is what matters, because no matter if you there are great players out there who, as soon as one thing goes wrong, they're done. They check out. So they might only be able to play at 70% of their actual ability when they're trying to fight through something, okay? And then what good is that ability, right? What good is it? But you take a player who's great and they handle adversity well, they're mentally tough, that's a very, very, very hard player to stop. And that's a player that, as a coach, you can trust, because you know that no matter what the situation is, they're out there fighting, they're out there competing, they're out there and they're doing the right things no matter what's happening. So, when you think about it, how do you handle yourself? Anybody can be positive, right? When, when things are going their way, when you're winning, like I said, when you're winning by 25 points, it's easy to be positive. It's easy to be a great teammate. It's easy to go in the gym and work hard during practice. It's easy to show up every day with a good attitude. But when you've lost 5 games in a row and it's the middle of, January, and the days are getting, shorter, and it's dark at 5 o'clock every day, and you go to school at 7, you don't get out till 6 from practice, you never see the sun, right? You just lost your fifth game in a row. It's not easy to always be positive at that point, right? It's not easy to always show up and get after it when you're facing adversity like that, right? When, you lose your starting spot, it's not easy to be positive at that point. It's not easy to be positive when your team goes on your team gives up a 15-0 run. Not easy to be able to handle that. But your reaction in those moments are what is going to allow you to long-term be the best player you can possibly be. Super, super important. And this is maybe one of the most important skills you learn through basketball. Is just how to handle yourself when things go poorly. Because in basketball, as is the case in anything, things are going to go poorly, right? You have to understand that, like, things are not going to go perfectly in just about anything. And so when you recognize that and you're prepared for it, and you know that, okay, no matter what happens, I'm good. Like, I'll get past this. I can get through this. If you can approach basketball life with that mindset, you're going to be fine. And you're going to be able to be successful in whatever it is you do because you have that outlook. So that's a super, super important thing that you can develop through basketball. And if you don't have that, then you're going to be limited, because when things are great and you play on a great team, you have great teammates and great coaches, and you guys win a lot, you'll be good. But as soon as one thing goes wrong, as soon as your coach says something you don't like, as soon as your teammate messes up, as soon as you guys start to lose a couple games, then the snowball just gets rolling downhill, and then what are you, right? If you don't have that mental toughness, then you're nothing, and you're not going to be able to be successful. So super important. Number 2, guys, is the way you handle adversity is going to make or break what you can be as a basketball player. And then the third thing is not working smart. So this goes with the way that you approach your training, like we talked about earlier, your recovery, your nutrition, all that sort of stuff, right? So I think talking about training is, maybe we'll start there. And this is obviously something I talk about basically every week is not about, guys, like, it's not about, oh, I went out there, I made 500 shots today. Like, cool. I hear that, and I'm like, that's fine. But were those all game reps? Like, were those all going game speed? Were those all, like, how will that translate for you? That's what I care about more. And that's when, that's something that I look at, and I'm like, okay, you know what? It's fine to go out and put in all this work, but is it quality work? Right? That's what we need to chase after. We're not chasing after just work. We're not chasing after just reps, after shots, after time in the gym. We're chasing after quality reps, quality shots, quality time in the gym. And again, I talk about this like literally every week. So if you guys are like, what is he even talking about? Just go watch like my last few episodes, and you'll basically learn everything that I have to say about this topic of quality work. When I talk about, like, for example, I always say to my players, especially my newer players, like, when we start a session and, maybe they're going through just, we're doing like some contested shooting and they're missing a lot, and it can be frustrating, but I'm like, listen, these shots for you right now are going to translate so well to games. So you might shoot a little bit worse right here, but this actually translates for you way better than if I just put you in the corner with no defense and had you just shoot shot or shot or shot. I know you're going to make all those shots. But if I put a defender closing out to you, now I know that you got a little bit of pressure you got to feel. You got to speed up a little bit. You got to be a little bit better, and that's going to push you a little bit more. But when you get to a game, there's going to be a defender closing out to you. So now you've been in that situation, and that's what I mean by quality, right? Is how does it translate to the game? And am I working on things that matter? Am I working on attacking closes? Am I working on hitting shots coming off of different actions that my team runs? Right? Am I working on handling pressure? Am I working on finishing? Where, maybe I work on my floater or working on my 2-foot finishing. All that sort of stuff that matters. Is that what I spend my time on? Am I getting quality reps at those things? Right? Obviously, going with like sleep, making sure you get enough sleep. Your nutrition, and then any of the other kind of after recovery stuff we talked about earlier too. And I think one of the most important things, guys, that I want you guys to have, that I want you guys to learn, that I want you to, like, again, this whole episode really, it just goes so much farther beyond basketball, right? Is not just about, okay, how do I train? How do I do this? Right? It's constantly trying to get better at your understanding, constantly trying to learn more about your craft, which is basketball, right? So how can I learn more about, skill acquisition, right? Can I read a book on this? Can I read a book on nutrition? Can I read a book on recovery? Can I read a book on, mental toughness? Can I read a book, by maybe, Coach K wrote a book. I'll read his book. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many players that you can learn from, so many coaches you can learn from, so many teachers out there you can learn from, researchers, all these sorts of things that you can take and you can become better. But it requires you to have a desire to constantly learn more. So if you can, get up every day and say, you know what, I'm going to learn more about how to become a better player. So I'm not just going to rely on, my one coach, like my one high school coach or my one travel coach to tell me exactly what I need to do to get better. I'm going to take some initiative, some responsibility myself, and I'm going to go out and I've got all this information at my fingertips on the internet. So I can learn about literally whatever I want to. So I want to get better at, I want to become a better finisher. Well, where do I go for that? Right? Is there something I can learn that's going to help me to become better at that? And if you constantly look at it like that, how can I get a leg up right here? Like, what can I learn that's going to give me an advantage right here? If maybe I get 1% better with my diet, maybe that's going to lead to me being better on the basketball court. And therefore, my results are going to be better. My training is going to pay off more because I took a little bit of time to, learn a little more about nutrition. Maybe if I get better with my recovery, I learn how can I get better sleep? How can I, do better? How, what stretches should I be doing? If I learn more about that, then maybe now I have the opportunity to be better on the court. Okay, so you have to have that mindset of constantly wanting to get better. And if you do that, guys, it's going to put you in a position where the sky is the limit. So again, just to kind of run through those three again, guys. Number one, the first thing that's going to hold you back as a basketball player is not competing to your utmost ability, not giving your all every single second you're on the court. Number two is not handling adversity well and not being able to overcome when things don't go your way. And then number three is not working smart, right? And not pushing yourself to constantly get better, to learn more, and to be better than you were the last day. Those are the three things, guys, that will hold you back. And again, this is nothing to do with the physical part of basketball. We're not even getting to that yet. If you don't have these three things, none of the other stuff matters, right? None of my workouts matter. None of my programs matter. None of it matters. None of the stuff that you watch on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, it doesn't matter if you don't have these three things under control. These three things that are completely in your control that you have to have. And I promise you guys, if you have these three things, you're going to be able to reach your highest potential as a basketball player. And in anything you do in life. Again, this whole episode has been stuff that's basketball, but it's far beyond basketball, which is why I always say, guys, like, you can't fail when you try your best at the game of basketball, because the stuff that you learn, like, it's not just going to benefit you on the court, but it's going to benefit you in whatever else that you end up doing after, right? Case in point with me. So I can speak from my own experience with that. So I hope that this helps you guys out. Again, if you're an Apple Podcast, leave a review. Let me know what you think. YouTube, drop a like, subscribe. I appreciate you guys. If you guys are not following me on Instagram, make sure you do that at Vision Driven Basketball. I talk about some of this stuff all the time, posting stuff from my workouts, all that sort of stuff. So go ahead and follow me on there. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.